This is the presentation on agents, and this is very exciting. And we start with the theme of this meeting: are agents people too? And Dom from South Africa said, yes, they are. All right, with that said, just a little bit about me. I've been in this business for a long time. I've been in the programming business for over 42 years. My first program I wrote was on punch cards. It was quantum ab initio equations, calculations. And there Sam says, great to hear. I learn a lot here. Great. Thanks, Sam. And with that, I got, like I said, 40 years in this area. I started with punch cards. I am very interested in AI, and I will be completing my PhD in quantum AI starting next year. I get the Dom Scholarship. So excited about that. With that, the Donovan Scholarship. And with that said, I have about 29 certs and counting. And when I started this group, I had 8 certifications in the cloud. And I thought, well, I can teach people how to get certs. And so I've been more blessed to do this than you guys have. Previous employment has been with the government, education, military. I was a captain, and my present company, I was a developer, DevOps tech lead, Scrum Master, QA architect, and now manager of training. So I've been around for a while, done a lot of different jobs. I got to tell you, my passion more than anything really is AI, and one of the reasons is about 25 years ago when I was at the math department at FSU in Florida, I had proposed in my math thesis this very thing that vector databases are doing today. And this is multidimensional space where all possibilities or all knowledge can be found, and exactly what these systems do. So I'm just really passionate about this area. Something I have to make myself go to sleep at 12 because I just keep programming. I would program all night. And this is a part 3 of a 3-part series. The first one was on LangChain and Hugging Face. The second one was ChromaDB and Pinecone. And this is on creating a Scrum agent. And we're going to talk about Scrum process a little bit, but specifically we'll be talking about agents. We're going to have an intro and icebreaker. We'll do a LangChain automating your task. I'm going to show you how to automate tasks, put things in a chain. This is really worth the price of the course. This will save you so much time if you can automate different things. And this is a good one. And then I'm going to show you how to take a Jupyter notebook and to convert it to Hugging Face using ChatGPT. So a lot of us are getting all these pieces of code and they're coming to us through notebooks, but I can't do a whole lot with it. So I'd like to get it up in something I can interact with, put an interface on it and make it work. I'm going to show you how to do that very rapidly using ChatGPT. And the newest thing, yes, the newest thing out there is AutoGen. Events coming up, of course, today is Mastering LangChain and AutoGen agent building. So we're going to look at agent building specifically. Next is a 3-in-1 AWS practitioner, and that's going to be the beginner, associate, and professional. But I'm going to do something special for this one. You're going to keep getting AI for the rest of your life from me. So specifically, we're going to build some applications using Hugging Face that you can use to actually study for and prepare for these exams. So this shall be extremely interesting. I will use chaining and agents and everything at my disposal to do that. With that, 2 in a row, a PL300 and a DP500, designing and implementing enterprise scale analytics, and that will be the 16th and 20th of January. And then mastering HashiCorp security automation, 24th of February, and then prepping for the IBM Certified Associate Quantum Computational Exam, 23rd of March. So if AI wasn't enough, quantum computing is following on the heels of it in the next 5 years, is going to pretty much send us into orbit. So if you're looking for artificial super intelligence, it's on its way. That said, my introduction reel here, I've shortened it a little bit today because we've got a lot of material to go over, but the AI sewing machine is here. So this is not unlike the Industrial Revolution, but it's happening in what we consider knowledge works. And we're going to come across this concept. If you're in the knowledge works business, and that's pretty much been protected from automation or machines, it's not anymore, and your career has been exposed. And so you want to make sure that you're transitioning in a sense that you're gaining these tech skills for the next generation of technology that's coming. All right, with that said, we'll move on. So why is it so incredible? What has happened? Well, we've solved the Tower of Babel problem. And so essentially, we have human intelligence in a box. We have what I call a universal translator that codes, is multimodal, and transforms. And when I think of transforming, I think of parallel processing. So imagine you're at your desk. I come by and say, hi, Charlie. And Charlie says, hi, Mike. And we start talking back and forth. He has some words. I have some words. He has some words. I have some words. Now imagine I come to Charlie's desk. I dump all my words on it at once. He immediately understands everything and all the connections and tells me what I'm going to say tomorrow with a 95% probability. Yep, that's kind of where we're at. And what we get from this, and it codes and it's multimodal, we'll see examples of that today. What we get from this is an exponential acceleration in knowledge, an extreme efficiency. And things that used to take me 3 weeks to do, I can now do in 10 minutes. So no kidding. And so just be aware, this is coming and you can embrace it. And I encourage you to do so. All right, at the icebreaker today, your work desk now has a button that when pressed automates any one task for you. What does that button do? Now I have to make a comment about this photo here. I actually got this photo from Bing Chat. Has anyone been using DALL-E in Bing Chat yet? Are you guys familiar with that? Because if you're not, I should do a demo of it real quick. So let me take this. Sri says he's used it. So basically, you can get images for free and not worry about copyright. Okay, so what you'll see here now, and this is interesting, just happened like a few days ago. Now we now have Copilot with Bing Chat, which is pretty amazing. And if you go to more creative, that's going to do the drawing for you. So if you just hit draw, and you can put the statement in there, and I went ahead and put your magic desk, and just hit that back, it's going to draw that image for you. So while that's drawing, I'll pull that down, and I can get some answers from you guys on this magic button deal. Your desk now has a button. You walk in and says, there it is. Wow, I should press it, and it automates any one task. What would that task be? All right. Thank you so much for your comment. I appreciate it. Anyone else? Anyone else on that magic button deal here? Here's your opportunity to have that magic button. And let's see what our Bing gave us. Okay, there you go. This is our Bing returns. And there you go. That's that magic button's pretty big. He's pressing it all the time. All right. With that said, we'll move on. Of course, we did part one. Part one was very much about getting started with Hugging Face and LangChain. And we learned there were a number of ways that you could program Hugging Face, Colab. You can use Visual Studio or PyCharm, and that can go right up on Hugging Faces. It's really nice. Hugging Face is like almost a GitLab. You can just throw something up and it runs, and you can interact with it. So I love it in that way as far as development is concerned. Part two, we went through vector databases. We did ChromaDB and Pinecone. Both of these are really great databases. And Pinecone offers a free, it's actually the commercial one. ChromaDB is local, but you can also persist at local, just to let you know that. But Pinecone is commercial, and they give you one free database. So you can actually get up and learn how to use it. And what I really like about Pinecone is they really advertise and teach their product. So there's a big teaching part of that as well. And we showed how to build those vector databases, document loading, splitting, storage, retrieval, and output. And today, yes, today we are doing agents. And so the theme of our meeting today are agents people too. So, and this once again is a DALL-E image. I thought it was pretty nice. Now, if you notice when DALL-E started drawing images, the fingers were always messed up, right? And now we have DALL-E 3 out, look, the fingers are right. So they're really coming along. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about LangChain, and we're going to learn about chaining. That's the first thing we're going to do today. And then I'm going to talk, before I get right into chaining, we'll talk about prompting as well. And LangChain just kind of started with a paper called React, and the link is down here for the React paper if you want to go there. And pretty much what was happening, we had this idea of chain of thought. And chain of thought is pretty much thinking through the process, all the elements of the process you need to do. And we're using our LMs for that reasoning, but it was kind of disconnected to actions because you'd have this chain of things to do, and you needed the computer to kind of figure out what tool to use when. And so that was a whole emphasis for LangChain. And now you have reasoning, chain of thought, that reasoning, and then the computer has these agents that determine what to do when. Isn't that pretty cool? Don says Chroma releasing hosted end of November. Oh, so there's going to be a hosting piece of Chroma. Thanks, Don, for that comment. Yes, nice to know. I did not know that. So you guys, I learned more from you guys than you learned from me. I appreciate it so much. Okay, with that said, so the idea that in order to make this happen, we need agents that, in a sense, what the agent would do is this be a piece of software to decide what to do when. And so with that, LangChain was born, and these agents came about. Along with these agents came chaining, and also a large tool set of things that you can do with LangChain. And you guys have the references for LangChain, so feel free to go there and look at it, and you'll see all the many things you can do. And it's a super large tools box that I love. And Hugging Face also has a large set of tools as well. With that said, I want to talk a little bit about prompt engineering and what happens with prompt engineering. Lots of times there's something called one shot. We do that with ChatGPT. We have a question, we throw it, and we expect an answer. And what they found is if you do a one shot and you get an answer back and you're not happy with it, and you keep asking it questions, it's hard for it to get off of that answer. All it does is try to reinforce that answer, and it will even hallucinate. And what hallucination means is that it will come up with an idea that is very convincing, but is still wrong. And so what they found, if you did something like a chain of thought where you went through a sequence of things, you had a larger, essential outline of things that could possibly answer this question, and you shot that at it, in a sense, you got a better answer, and it did not hallucinate as much. And what we found is, and in my opinion, as a mathematician, what's happening is with the one shot, you have in a sense, a lessly dense neighborhood, and so you can think of it as a country town. So you may have a country doctor, and you may have a lawyer, and you may have a recreation center. And so whatever's in that town is where you stay. And so when you ask someone a question, they can only answer you from that lessly dense vector space point. Where when you have a chain of thought, where you actually have it more like a city where there's lots of resources to zero in on the answer that you're looking for. So that's my opinion, and from a mathematical perspective, that seems to be what's happening. Now, there is a point where there's less return. And so what they found out with these one shots, if you add two examples, okay, not one example, not as much, but if you add two examples, it adds a lot. But if you keep adding, it doesn't have as much return. And the reason being so is because, believe it or not, though these spaces are very, things that they're doing is very amazing. They found out that models like ChatGPT 3.5 was very sparsely trained on a relative scale, and actually be trained more to even be better. So the more training, the better they are. With that said, I mentioned earlier that we had in a sense solved the Tower of Babel problem. So my first example today will be absolutely that, solving the Tower of Babel problem, having other people talk to other people. And so what I built was Mike's global customer care system, and this is on Hugging Face. We'll go to it in a moment. And what it will do, it will take a email in pretty much any language. I think they're up to about 195 languages that can be translated. And it will first tell you what that language is written in. Then it will translate that email. Then it will summarize that email. Then it will automatically give you a response. Now this is where, and I don't have, for this one, I don't have it hooked up, but this is where you'd want your ChromaDB or your PineConeDB hooked up. So it searches that ChromaDB document base and gets all the information for the response. And then it will take that response and it will translate it back into the original language, into Chinese. So there you go. So now, in the olden days, this would take, I don't think we could even do this. So what's happening from a computer standpoint, and then we'll go look at some code. From a computer standpoint, we're actually using chaining, line chain chaining. And so we're going to chain 5 events together. And the first event is going to be determining the language. The second event is going to be translating language. The third event is going to be getting the summary. The fourth event is going to be responding, and the fifth event is going to be translating back. All right, cool. And the thing about it, which drives me insane, is that this code is so simple. And it's really, most of it is just written in English. It's not even coding, you're prompt coding. And so the first template is just return the language this email is written in. That's it. It's insane. And the second one is, hey, translate this email. What? You're kidding. So you're taking the language, right, from the template 1, you're putting it into template 2, and it's now translate to English. And then the next one is, hey, create a short summary. So you're going to take the output from template 2 and put it in template 3. And then now reply to the sender of the email, giving a plausible response of the summary. That's it. You're telling it, hey, give me a response. And so if you had a vector database, you'd be pulling that from the vector database and promise to address the issue. And the next one would be translate. That's insane. I mean, it's just you're telling it what to do. Let's take a look at the code and let's run it. All right. Now, if you guys just showed up to the room and you need the key, you want to run this code as well, you can do that. Let me go ahead and give you the, there's the key for the key. So what you want to do, we'll go ahead and go to the Hugging Face and we'll try it out. And so what you want to do to try this out, I just go ahead and put the key in. That's your API key. And then I'm going to go put an email in there. So let me see if I can copy the email here from the actual slide. Here's my Chinese, and I'm going to submit that. And we'll cross our fingers and hope it works. Maybe the demo gods will be kind to me today. Okay, let's see. Did it come back in Chinese? Oh, good. So So if I make this a little bigger now, you can see what happens. It's going to translate for me. Okay. And then what it's going to do, and what I did is I said, give me Chinese. And what I did, I actually switched the order. So it put the summary first. So it gives me a summary of what it said. And then it gives me a translation of it. And then it gives me a reply. And if you read the reply, it's a long, very compassionate reply on how important it is that you can do this. And someone Sri said, can you increase your font? I'll try to do that. Here I can't. Sorry about not on this one right here. And then it translates it back into Chinese. And so this is pretty amazing. Now, guys, let me show you something about Hugging Space that you really like, that I really like. And I'll try to get the bigger font on this one, Sri. If you go to Files, okay, good. So if you go to Files, all the files are there. So you can go and take a look at it. And this is relatively small. Okay, with that said, you can go to Requirements file. What you see in the Requirements file, bring that a little bigger, is the imports. And so it sees those imports and it actually tries to, it brings all those in. So you need to, when you're bringing code in, just make sure you get the right inputs, ports, and then we'll go back to the code. And so you have your typical imports, and the interface I used for this was Gradio. And you have your typical LangChain imports, and then you have your translator. And what you're seeing is just the first part just pretty much just brings in the API key and the chat open API. And then you just have pretty much you create your templates. And you can use this for anything. Any process you want to automate, you can use this code, just change what you write. And you'll, through prompt engineering, just change the language. Tell it to do what you want it to do, and it will do it. And the key to the code itself is pretty much, running the sequence chain. So you go chain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it just takes the output of 1, puts it in 2, 2 into 3, 3 into 4, and 4 into 5. And a lot of my processes are like this, where I'm just pretty much processing one thing after another. Now, if I need to stop and think, and I need to process information, then I'm going to need an agent. So I can build this chain to a certain point, build my agent, get that information out, and go back into the chain. There's lots of things you can do with this, but the point here is pretty much mostly just English, very understandable, and it's only 59 lines of code. Now, if you told me a few years ago that I was going to be able to build a translator that could take 195 languages, and that translator would take those 195 languages and could translate it to English, give me a summary, give me an automatic response, and send it back in that language, I would go, you're crazy. And it's turned out these chat systems are about 95% accurate. And I'm not talking about chat systems as far as translation. I'm talking about these customer care systems that they're building. Because once they put all the information into the vector database, it gets it. All right. So if you have a customer care system with a huge amount of information, a lot of history, what people have been asking, and you put that on a vector database, you can pretty much bank on a pretty high accuracy of these systems. I have a question. How long do you think it took me to build this? 2 hours. 2 hours. less than 60 lines of code, 2 hours. And so I'm going to actually show you how to do this, how to build these things, okay? Rapidly using ChatGPT. All right, you ready? All right, let's do it. Okay, so what I want to talk to you guys about is there's a lot of code out there. And there's a lot of places to grab code to build things. But typically a lot of code out there is not usable. And one way to make it usable is use the ChatGPT. And so I want to give you a few places to go. I do a lot of training. I teach a lot. So I do a lot of training in Udemy. I love it. And Udemy has a course called LangChain Python Bootcamp. And the first part of this code was in there, but it was in a Jupyter notebook. And so that's not usable. I can't do anything with that unless I put it in a Jupyter notebook and I run Jupyter notebooks all day. But I can't interface with my customer like that. So with that said, here's a great course if you want to learn more about LangChain and Python. However, let me tell you guys, wait for the deals. If you're going to buy a Udemy course, they're always running deals. And this course right here is about 84 bucks, but if you wait, you can get it for 15. So let you know that. But my goal was to take this Jupyter code from this guy's course to bring it into Hugging Face with a Gradio interface and to extend that code. And so I'm going to tell you exactly how I did that. So what I did is the first thing I did is I opened up his repository. And I took that Jupyter code in all those various cells. And if you do any training now, you see it's all in Jupyter code. You can't do anything with it. So you take them out and I pasted it all in PyCharm. So let's do that. And immediately I recognized the code did not have an API key, but it needs an API key for LangChain. So a lot of this stuff you're going to have to do with knowledge. So if you have an architecture or a coding background, this is really great because you don't have to code anymore, but you do need to understand what it's writing and do recoding and basically do a lot of debugging. So you end up doing that, but you're going to see something pretty amazing here. So here's the code, and if you go down, that's the first part of the code. And it's not even, this is not even good for me because I have to manually type everything. So if I want anything, it's not an input. I can't do anything with it. Transmitting data, I have to, I'm just stuck in this system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this code into ChatGPT. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste this code in, and I'm going to put a prompt at the top of this code. And what my prompt is going to say, create a Gradio interface that has an input for the open API key, because you remember it didn't have one, input for email, and output for the language, translation and summary, and rewrite the code as necessary to hook up the interface. You got to be kidding. You got to be kidding. Really? And so I run that. And I'm using Gradio, but this works with Streamlit as well. Matter of fact, I think it works better with Streamlit than it does with Gradio. And what is it going to do? It's going to write the code. So there's tons of code out there. You got little pieces or snippets, or there's even full libraries that you can let this thing loose on and just immediately translate it and build it into whatever you want to build it into. And so, you're just like, you should be on fire. And there it built that code. And then what I do, the next step is I'll take my code. So I put it in there, I put my prompt in there, and I run the prompt. It creates the code. And then what I do is I create a Hugging Face space, and we showed how to do that last time. I paste the code and I create a requirements text file, and you saw the requirements text file. All right, and there you have it. There's my requirements text file. And the next thing I do, if there's any errors, I don't necessarily try to fix them. I just I copy the error, and I feed it back into ChatGPT and ask it to fix the error. Now, ChatGPT may not always fix the error, but it typically knows what the problem is. And so if you talk to it a little bit, you can figure out what the real issue is and recode it. Now, for extending the code, now you have this code that's running, half of it's running, but you want to do more. Should I just start coding? No. Just go back into ChatGPT and say, extend my code, and tell it what you want it to do. And if you get any errors, feed those errors back. So I really didn't write much code at all when I wrote this program. I just took some code that looked like kind of what I wanted, and I put it into the ChatGPT, and I said, build me an interface. I put up a Hugging Face, debugged it by putting the errors back in, and then said, here, extend it, add these things to it. And I was done. And that's how you can just rapidly build code, like, stuff like this in 2 hours. And if you're an instructional designer, which you might spend 4 months building a course, I'll tell you, you can now build a course in an hour using these same type of techniques. So it solves a lot of problems. And as we talk about the Scrum process, we'll move on to talk about it in a moment. You can see some other problems that it solves. Now, one of the things I'm experiencing as I work with developers is they're really good at coding, but they're really not sure how to use this stuff. Yeah, that's going to tell you how you can use it, some use cases today, okay? Any questions so far? Yeah, so there you go. You guys have any comments on this so far? Have you been doing this type of thing yet? Has anyone been coding like this yet? And Sri says no. Yeah, you got to try it. Now, it does take a little bit of getting used to, and it does get to, and as you get used to how to do it, you just start rethinking. Dom says how he got into coding. Yeah, thank you, Dom, for that comment. For me, it's like I go to night every night almost like with a revelation. I can do that now. So it's like, wow, it is an interesting, different way of thinking about things. For me, the whole idea to write a code just by telling it what to do in words is just, unbelievable. All right, with that said, as I mentioned, so I end up every morning having the 3 stages of AI grief. I go, what? What just happened? Because as soon as I think of something, this stuff is moving so rapidly that every time you turn around, there's a new advancement in AI. So, and then you go, oh, well, I can do that. Let's do it. There you go. All right. So if you're in the knowledge creation business, okay, not to say some portion of your career has been exposed to generative AI, which means in the future, some portion of your career is going to be done by AI. I will say, I used to do something at work, and I won't say what it is, but it was time intensive. And yesterday I found out they're going to use AI for it, so that job's been taken away. And I just kind of made the joke, AI has taken my job, and it will. It'll take portions of your job away. But don't be afraid because you can upscale. And that's what I'm trying to encourage you guys. You have the ability to upscale. Everyone in this area, content creator, graphic designer, software developer, musician or composer, video producer, architect, fashion designer, game developer, marketing, analysts, have the ability to upscale to do things they have never been able to do before. And for example, if you're a Scrum Master, and we'll use Scrum Master example, you just got supersized. There's a lot of things you were not able to do before that you can now do, and I'm going to do a nice demo on that. And the reason that's true is because this stuff is multimodal, okay? And what the heck does that mean? It is multimodal. That means if I do a syntactical search and I say, draw relaxing on the beach on a beautiful sunny day, taking in the sights and sounds far distant mountains, it'll do that. But then if I insert a train whistle, not words, but a audio train whistle, it'll put a train right next to me on the beach. But then if I take an image of an elephant and throw that in as a search requirement, it will replace the train with elephants. It's multimodal. Now, I have a very important point here to say is that if I was a graphic designer, it would take me hours, to create these things, to pull the train off, to put the elephants in, to rotate the scenes. But you're not creating them. You're finding them in multidimensional space. So they're already there. You're just pointing to them with a vector in multidimensional space. And that's one of the problems that we're having with copyright, is that these actual images can't be copyrighted because they're like a point on a number line. I mean, you can't say, oh, here's 27. I claim that as mine. You can't use 27. No, 27 is a point on a number line. You can't do that. Now, you may have a problem with how the models are created, but what the models are doing themselves are just finding things in multidimensional space, pointing to them. All right, with that said, why is this so significant for Scrum Masters? Why does that make him superstars? Because a Scrum Master can now go to the whiteboard, and sit with his development team and draw a program using a UML diagram. You can now take that UML diagram and drop it into ChatGPT and say, hey, write that program from the diagram. Let's do that demo. If you have ChatGPT 4, you will notice there's now an image icon right here. And so you have the ability to actually drag images into ChatGPT 4, and actually ChatGPT 4 will interpret those images. Now, it's not released for development API yet, but that's coming. So once the development API comes out, then I'll be able to do the same thing with the APIs. So let's go ahead and grab an image right here, and that very image here of some code. Excuse me, I'm moving things around because I'm doing demos. And so we're going to take that and we're going to drag it right there into the image screen. All right. And I'm going to say, okay, write the code that this image depicts. And I could say code in Python. Let's do that. And when I do that, let's see what happens. So in this case, I'm not using Gradio, I'm using Streamlit. And there you go. They say, let's do a pip install of OpenAI, and let's import Streamlit. Here's the definition of what it's doing. It's going to write the code. Insane. Why this is so significant is that one of the problems with the Scrum cycle is how fast you can iterate. And this enables you to iterate, in a sense, several sprints, in one setting. So you can imagine you're there with your team and you're writing out the framework for this code you're going to build. And then they go back and try to build it, and you go back 2 or 3 cycles, and then maybe after 3 sprints you have it done. That's 6 weeks. But instead, you're there at the computer, you take a snapshot of what the screen is, you bring the image in, and you write the framework, and then you start testing it. And then you take pieces of that framework and you start filling it out. And so you start delivering a minimal viable product, and you're able to cycle rapidly, as opposed to 6 weeks to do something. You can do it in an afternoon. All right, cool. So how many of you guys have seen the visual chat piece at this point? This just came out a couple of weeks ago. Not yet, but you're an inspiration. Thank you, Dom. Yeah, Dom said not yet. You're an inspiration. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is pretty amazing stuff. And as it moves on, it's going to get more amazing as it assumes more data. Yeah, Aldo, I didn't know the visual chat can create a program from a diagram. Yeah, right, Aldo. Thank you for your comment. I didn't know that either, so I tried it. Yeah, excellent. And you can go the other way. Create a diagram from that's pretty much where we are as far as chaining is concerned. I want to move on and start talking about agents and getting into the agent space. We have about 40 minutes to do that. We have enough time. So one of the needs for the agents is that you actually need the ability to decide what the program's going to do or what tool the program's going to use as it goes through its chain. And so you have this element router, and then you have these chains, and one could be customer support and one could be internal employees. So you imagine you get some data and customer support can't handle it. Maybe the AI doesn't know the answer, so you have to go to a real person, and it routes that to a real person. So basically what we've learned how to do, and it turns out that AutoGen does a good job of this, is to insert a real person into the process. And then it says, is LM router an abstraction in LangChain? That's a good question. Let's see what ChatGPT says. It may not know what LangChain is, by the way. Now, I think I'm glad this came up because I want to ask you a question. This is really good. If by abstraction you mean class, I would say yes. So I like this. As of 2022, I am not a competent call. I am not aware of that component. Now, here's the question. Yes. Thank you, Dennis. Dennis said yes, class. So here's the thing. How is it that ChatGPT saying it has no knowledge of LangChain, right? Can program in LangChain? As a matter of fact, there's a lot of things it doesn't have knowledge. And if I go, do you have knowledge? I don't know what that is, but it can still program in that. How is it that it has no knowledge of that, but can still program in that? When I ask it to build, when I give it sample code and say, build this for me, it builds it out and it connects it for me. How can it do that if it has no knowledge of it? Anybody know? The answer to that question is that you're working with a genius. So even if I've had people come to me and they brought me code and say, not that I'm a genius, but they brought me code and say, hey, Mike, can you figure this out for me? And I may have never seen that code before, but I maybe I have some expertise in syntax. And so, well, according to this syntax, it should look like this. You see, ChatGPT is an expert in syntax. So you can give it an example of what you're looking for, and it can take the idea of syntax and build that for you. And lots of times it'll put in things that are plausible, and I'll look at that's plausible. What's the real answer for that? I maybe have to do a little research to fix that piece. But that's why it can write code it's never seen before. That's why it can write code it has no knowledge of, because it's an expert in syntax. All right. With that said, we're going to move on. And we'll go back. All right. So going to agents, pretty much when I started this presentation, there was a whole litany of agents that I was looking at. You probably heard some of these. AutoGTP was really one of the big ones that got everything going. And what AutoGTP had the ability to do was just, you gave it a task and just kept going until it was done. And then you had Baby AGI, and I have an example of Baby AGI. I built that out on Hugging Face. There was Camel. MetaGPT is extremely interesting. I'll show an example of that today. And ChatDev, once again. I have a national presentation the middle of next month, and I'm prepping for it, and I'm going to build a Scrum team. And so I've been looking at these different systems so I could build a Scrum team and actually operate that as an autonomous agent. But it turned out that while I was doing that, AutoGen came out, which I've been working with a bit since it came out. But anyway, what is an agent? An AI agent is a digital entity designed with artificial intelligence, to perceive its surroundings. to make decisions and to act to fulfill certain objectives. So it's actually going to, and you can see, I'll have a better screenshot of this. Let me go to the next one. You can see for Meta GTP, you actually have a software company that has an idea that is going to build something out. And part of that, you create these different agents that are going to work together to build this product. One could be a boss, one could be a product manager, one could be an architect, one could be a project manager, one could be an engineer, one could be a QA analyst. And so each of those have those roles that they can do, and each of those will talk to each other depending on what needs to be done. Okay, and we'll see some examples of this today. And so as I was working through all this and building my Scrum team out comes AutoGen like last week. And so Microsoft just released AutoGen. It makes it really easy to build agents. Okay, and those agents have conversational pieces, but they also have chat rooms, and that's what a lot of the systems were missing, was the ability to throw all these into like a chat room and have them chat back and forth and have a chat manager. And that's a piece that AutoGen is giving you. And not only that, it doesn't run on LangChain, and it's really easy to program. So we're going to actually be looking at AutoGen today as our agent creator. It's not the only way to do this, and it may not be the preferred way depending on what your software piece wants. But it's pretty cool to look at. And so I mean everyone's everyone's new to this, and everyone's building these things, and they're just like we're a bunch of like a kids in a candy shop, right? So let me go ahead and show you a little bit more, and we'll get right on to programming. Before I get on to programming, I want to introduce you to someone who's really kind of the AutoGen champion out there on the web, and that's Matthew Berman. And Matthew Berman has some really great videos out there, some of them really good introductory stuff. So, and the first one I put here is getting started with AutoGen, and he walks you through step by step, getting up and running AutoGen. Now, let me say AutoGen is extremely easy to get up and run. Okay. And all you have to do pretty much is installation of AutoGen for the most part is just a pip install of PyAutoGen, and you're up and going. So it's really easy to do. The rest of it is pretty much typical how you build and work with Python when it comes to running these type of systems. So the next one is an intermediate that he walks you through, and it's one of the examples that you find on the AutoGen site. So if you go to the AutoGen site, they actually have a series of examples that you can actually work through and walk through. And these are all Jupyter notebooks. And if you look at this, this particular one, he actually builds out in Visual Code Studio. And he has an assistant and he has a proxy. And the assistant and we'll look at the code in a moment. And so if you want to watch him build out, and what he does, he explains every line of code. And so if you want to really get up to speed on building these things, go to that tutorial as well. I obviously don't have enough time in this short time to do this. And actually, these are the details I really get bored with. There's other things I want to do. And that is, I'm more of like a prompt engineer type. I want to build and construct using these type of systems as a prompt engineer. So that's kind of where my passion is. And these small details, I just let ChatGPT handle them. Okay. With that said, if you want to see all the examples that are in ChatGPT, I put the link here below. Let me throw that in the chat. Excuse me, for AutoGen, you can actually go there and look at those examples and build them out yourself. So if you once you follow Matthew's tutorials, okay, then you'll be able to build any of these because they're all built the same way, and you throw them in. And for the most part, they always run. Okay, so put that in. Pretty much what he's going to build out, and we'll look at here in a moment, is a two agent system. And this two agent system has a user proxy and has an assistant agent. And so the user proxy is a user shell with a human in the loop. So you have the ability to do three things. There's an always, there's a never, and there's a terminate. So if you say always, whenever you go back and forth and the human's there, it's going to stop the program, and in the prompt it's going to say, do you have some feedback? And so you'll give the system feedback if you have feedback. If you put terminate, it'll only ask for feedback when it's done. And you put never, it won't even bother you. Now, there's pretty much just, once again, prompt engineering, programming through prompts. So you say, and for the assistant, say you are a coder specializing in Python. So that means you're going to write any Python program I want you to write. And for the user proxy, it says reply terminate if the task has been solved at full satisfaction. Otherwise, reply continue or the reason why the task is not solved. So to come back to, I think, Dennis's question, if you continue to drill down into this code, you see below that there's a lot of code that tells you when the system's satisfied that it's done what it's supposed to do. So there's a lot of code underneath this that's functioning to make this happen. And then I'm going to put a task in here. Now, it turns out I used a different task than Matthew did. And that's because I actually wrote this program before he did for Hugging Space. So before his demonstration, I actually put up a program similar to this in Hugging Space because we're all looking at the examples and we're trying to build things. And so this program, I said, write a program that calculates the number of a Hebrew word using the gematria and write a test for Yahava, which should be the number 26. So, and I put that in and I ran that code. So let's go ahead and take a look at it in PyCharm. I'll use PyCharm. You can use Visual Studio Code. Let's run it, and then let's look at that my Hugging Space face adaptation of it. Okay. Okay. Here. Here's the actual code, and just one thing about the code, I was really delighted to see. If you go to the documentation AutoGen, there's this really complex deal when it comes to the configuration list. And I looked at it and I simplified it. And then I looked at his code and he did the same thing. So I felt good. We're thinking the same thoughts. So I threw out a bunch of code and he did too. And then once you do that, you're going to create your your large language model config, and he'll explain all the different parameters. One is temperature. So you want to keep the temperature to 0, which means 0 to 1, 1 is very creative, 0 is not. So if you're doing coding, you don't want to be real creative, right? You're not writing a novel. And then you got your assistants, and your assistant's your coder. And then you got your user proxy. And he'll explain what all these parameters are. But down at the bottom, here's your task. And what it is, your user proxy will initiate the chat. And in this particular case, you only have one person in the chat. So let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. Cross your fingers. And this is all terminal driven. And so you're going to see everything in the terminal and everything through the command line. And of course, I'm not going to want that. I'm going to want what? To interact with it. So I'm going to take it into Hugging Face, and I'm going to create an interface for it. All right. And so one thing about it is you see one of the parameters in this code is right here on the C42, that's cache. So if it's already done it, it's not going to go out to OpenAI and burn up your key tokens to do it again. It's going to give you back the cache. So as long as I haven't changed anything, what the program outputted to me was write this program and the assistant to user proxy. Sure, here is a simple Python program that calculates the gematria. So he wrote it. Then you're going to write a test. So you wrote a test. Okay. And by the way, if you're a test engineer, you should be shaking in your boots right now. And what I'm saying, don't be scared, just upgrade. So if you're a test guy, you can now be a programmer. If you're a programmer, you can now be an architect. Right? And then what the program does, it just goes through it to make sure that it's done. There's some going back and forth over confusion. And they're talking back and forth about the program. They're wanting, sure, if you want to continue with more tests, he's going to write some more tests. Hey, can you give me some more tests to prove it? So it has 3 more Hebrew words in there, calculating the gematria for, explaining those, making sure it all works, and say, I apologize for the more confusion. So they're working through everything, getting it right, and ta-da-da-da, the tests work. So, and then they're done. They terminate. So, yeah. And how did it know it had to do that? I mean, it's underneath in the code. One of the things I like about PyCharm, by the way, once again, Dennis, going back to your comment, is that if you use PyCharm or even Visual Studio Code, and you want to see what's underneath this code, it's really easy. Just click on it, right? So let's see, for example, I might really want to know what's happening with the user proxy, right? So I just am on Mac, command click. That takes me to that code below it, and I can see all the code underneath it and what it's actually doing. And from that, you can actually figure out why it's actually able to terminate. Okay. So yeah, so use that. And I like to do that all the time, is dig deeper. What's really happening? The thing about it is they're exposed as well, because I could suddenly just take all this, take it into ChatGPT and rewrite it to do something else. Have my own, in a matter of maybe a week, I could have my own AutoGen just by taking all this at ChatGPT and re-engineering it. So, we got a tool that builds tools. So there you have it. All right, that was that example, but I want to go to Hugging Space and take a look at my cool thing. So let's go there now. So to be honest with you, the way I built this is I took that code, I went into ChatGPT, I said build it with an interface, Streamlit interface, and I got an error. And so when I got that error, I said, how do I fix it? I'm just making this bigger for you guys. and it gave me the fix. And so it turns out there seems to be a threading issue between AutoGen and Streamlit, also Gradio as well. And so the way to fix that is to run it as a subprocess. So I'll show you the code in a moment. But let's go ahead and stick the token in there and see what it gives me, okay? Throw my token in there. All right, and then just solve it. And so it's going to crank away. And there, that was pretty fast. That was blazingly fast. All right, so you got the user proxy going to write a program. You got the user to chat. A coder has coded it out. And that's right. So it's creating the test. I just tickle. Here's a revised version. So it revised the version of the code. That is driving me crazy. And there it is. Oh my goodness. So there you go. And great. I'm glad to hear that the modified code worked and produced the expected outcome. The geometry calculation of Java yielded the correct result of 26. And so what this allows me to do is put anything in here. Okay, so I can come in here and put anything. Anybody want me to put anything? Have it write a program? Anybody want anything in here? And that's why I like it, because I can interact, right? So I'm not on a prompt interacting. And so Alex says, hello, Michael. I'm wondering, when should we use Jupyter Notebook and when should we put the code in PyCharm or VS Code? So this, to answer your question, Alex, this is what I do. I immediately go to VS Code or PyCharm. As soon as I understand the code, right? And as soon as I have an idea of what I want the code to do, I'll take it into VS Code or Visual Studio Code. Because I mean, I'm pretty much limited to what I can do with the notebook. But once I get into that, then it expands what I can do. Yeah. Yeah. As soon as I see the code, I understand the code, I immediately move it over. Because then once I'm there, I can copy and paste the whole thing and put it into ChatGPT and say, rewrite it to do this or that. Yeah, sure, Alex. No problem. That said, I did have a threading issue with bringing it into Hugging Space. And I discussed this with ChatGPT for a while, and there's a number of ways to solve it. One way is to run AutoGen as a sub-process. And so, and that way you can actually have that interface and it running as a sub-process and avoid the threading. And if you want to see the interaction, you can bring up the logs and you'll see the interaction in the logs. I'm not completely happy with this, and I may end up having to rewrite some of the AutoGen code to make it work the way I want to work in Hugging Faces. So that's why you see me digging down into the classes. Yeah. All right. With that said, let's go to something a little more advanced. And this is called a retrieval agent. And what the retrieval agent has, it has a boss, a product manager, a code reviewer, a senior Python engineer, a assistant boss. And what it wants to know is how to use Spark for parallel training in Phlegm, and give me sample code. And so this is actually one of the examples on AutoGen site. And so if you go there, you can actually read all about this example. And so I actually, and you can see the code here is pretty much again, just telling these guys what they're going to do. If you look at the coder, as your Python engineer, you are a senior Python engineer, reply terminate in the end when everything is done. That's pretty simple. If you're the PM, like the product manager, you are a product manager, reply terminate in the end when everything is done. Well, these are really simple stuff. And this code goes on and on and on, and you can actually put that into PyGem and run it. And I am not, and the reason I am not going to run it is because is prohibitively expensive. But let's look at the guts of it, okay? And then I'll talk about why this stuff is getting expensive. Okay, so the guts of this code, pretty much what it does, it takes all these players, the boss, the coder, the PM, and the retriever, and puts them into a group. And then you take that group and you put them into a chat manager. And that chat manager basically initiated by your boss or by the proxy user. And in that chat group, they all talk back and forth. And that's the genius of what's happening here. Gives you the ability to create as many agents as you want, and they can talk back and forth. But the more you have, the more it costs. And so this is my recent bill. And so when I first started working with this stuff, I actually was just using pennies. I thought, this is great. This is not very expensive. I can code away. And then just, and then next thing you know, I hit my $10 limit like yesterday or a few days ago. And then I hit my $20 limit. And so whenever you run these chat systems, they get very expensive. All right. And so what's happening in industry, you're seeing a reaction to this stuff. And the reaction for a lot of people in the industry is we're not going to use it. You're seeing that happen. You're seeing certain portions of industry going, we're not going to use this. We got to filter this out because people are going to put our information in and that's going to get out there on the web. And I totally agree with that. But then what happens is guys like me who are developing end up paying the bill, right? We're going to run it, we're going to develop, we're going to use it. But if I keep going in the direction I am and run these agents the way I am, I'm going to be paying a $200 bill by the end of the month. So there are ways to get around this. And when we meet again, I'll tell you how you get around this. Okay. One way is to use LM Studio and run it locally. Another way is to use the models in like Mistra in Hugging Space, right? That's right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dom. Dom has broke the code. This is what's happening. OpenAI has, and what Dom says, OpenAI is reducing the API costs soon, apparently. Like Dom, there's just been leaked out that in their next conference, they're going to announce a reduction because their problem is once developers get to the agents and they start, working with them, the cost goes up exponentially. And here's one, if you look at this right here, I shut it down, but I was on for a minute and a half and I already spent, almost, $1, $1.50 just for a minute and a half. This thing's over $1 a minute, right? So I had to shut down. And it's like they're knowing that's happening now. Now that everything's starting, when people are using agents, they're using this interactive stuff, the price is going up, but that's exactly what they want. They want this built out. So the way they're going to do that is going to reduce the price. Do you know how much you're going to reduce it by? We'll see. I'm hoping for, Dom, I'm hoping for the factor of 20 because it's going to have to be a factor of 20 before I actually start developing in this. But what I will do is, yeah, you're right. That's what I heard. Thank you, Dom. So basically, it's going to have to be a lot cheaper before I start cranking all this out because this is really expensive. Or I'm going to go into Hugging Space and I'm going to use Mistra as opposed to um, OpenAI. And Mistra is not is tooled like OpenAI, so you can actually talk to it, and it's actually pretty good. At least for development purposes, it's pretty good. All right. With that said, we're at 15 minutes before we're over, and we're making pretty good progress. I do have a few more programs to show you. I want to show you some of the programs I wrote. Okay. And one of them is the AutoGen Story Writer. And basically, in the AutoGen Story Writer, I have the boss, which is the UZ proxer. I have an author, I have a planner, I have an editor, I have a critic, and I have a user, which is the reader. And so let's go ahead and take a look at that code real quick. AutoGen Book Writer. And so if you click on that, what you're going to get is you're going to get a nice little interface where you can actually go and run one of my programs called a logline creator. We're going to look at here in a moment. And then you can actually put a story in here from the logline creator and actually have it run the story. Okay. And it'll write a story for you. And these different elements are going to talk back and forth and help you create that story. So basically the author, the planner, the editor, the critic, the user, and the boss are going to talk back and forth and help you build the story that you're trying to write for the log line. Now, if you guys are not familiar what a log line is, we're going to go look at that program real quick. And what a log line is, it's used in movie studios. And when you write a script, you write a log line. And a lot of you guys might think of the script as the plot, right? So yeah, that's how you might think of it. It's a plot of the story. Let me pull my token real quick. It's the plot. And so many times, if you want to get that script read, then what has to happen is you have to have a good plot. Thank you, Shreya. Thanks for coming. I will be putting the video up. And Shreya says, I have to run, but this has been very helpful. Thank you, Michael. You're amazing. Thank you so much, Shreya. That's a very sweet comment. Please check the video out for the last part. So you're actually looking at a logline creator, and that's what you want to give to your producer, because if he's going to read your script, you're going to have a good logline. So what this logline creator does, it allows you to put in a few details, right? And it'll create a logline for you from those details. So anyone got some details they want to throw into the chat? Maybe there's a movie that's been burning in your heart you want to see a logline for. Someone throw a few details for a movie for me in the chat. Oh, Dennis put one out there. Okay, we're going to take Dennis's prompt and we're going to throw it in there. Thank you, Dennis, for doing that. And Dennis said, in the world where dreams are tangible reality, a down and out of luck musician stumbles upon a mysterious instrument that allows him to manipulate the dreams of others, leading him down a dark path of ambition and more. Now that's a great log line already. This would just take a few details, but we'll put the whole one in there and it'll create something for you. So let's see what it creates from that. Thank you so much, Dennis, for that. And so it created a log line and it says the melody of shadows. Okay, I said, in a world where dreams hold the key to unimaginable power, a talented young dream weaver must navigate a treacherous realm of nightmares and confront his own haunting past in order to unravel the secrets of a mysterious melody that threatens to tear apart reality itself. There you go. I love it. They think I'm always impressed. I wrote this and it did better than I thought it could. So there's your story. All right, I'm gonna go back to the monkey story though. That made me laugh. That was really cool. Thank you so much, Dennis. That rocked. Let me go ahead and pull the token again, and then I'm gonna put it into the AutoGen story. I'm gonna have it write a story about monkeys. All right, so you just put your key in, and nice thing about this, you can see it's got the eye there, so I can show it or not show it right. I see. Yep, that looks right. And then you're going to come on down, and then you've got the log line. I put it in there and just say begin writing. So anyway, at that point, it's done writing. So the user proxy says, look, in a vibrant, here's what I want you to write about. And let's see what we got here. Sam says, how do you choose whether to use Streamlit or Gradio? That's a good question, Sam. I have been experimenting with both of them. Streamlit has a really nice interface. It's more complex than Gradio is. And so if you want a lot of the features, Streamlit will do that. But I've noticed that certain programs don't work well with it, and I'm trying to figure out why. And so Gradio is a lot simpler. It's just much simpler. It doesn't have as many as bells and whistles, which means it has less code to interact with. And so I am actually come from a front end development background, Sam. And so as a result, I'm really looking at this front end because I want to communicate and build those front end interactive environments. And I actually wrote a book once on 3D animation. So the idea is to get that 3D animation working with this AI. And so I'm trying to figure all that out. So the long and short of it, Sam, is if you're doing something really complex, you may go with a lighter front end like Gradio, so it doesn't interact with the code. And there's certain things that Gradio does do better, does tabbing better than Streamlit does. So it's pretty much what you think that code will do for you. And Dom says, whatever works best for you, I would imagine, but for what I gather, Streamlit is a little more sophisticated. Absolutely. You just said everything I said, Dom. So Dom says the same thing I just said. It's more sophisticated. I could be wrong. I am learned noob after all. All of us are. All this is new. We're Dom, just to pair that comment, this is new to all of us. I mean, I work on it to 12 o'clock every night, but to me, it's just new to all of us. Sam, is great. Thanks. Looking to also to build graphical. Yes, Sam, if you want to partner up on something, just let me know. I am also looking at the static HTML and using that piece as well. I know there's also a Docker interface for Hugging Face. Oh, very true, Dom said. Yes, we're all new to it. And so anyway, it goes to it, it starts talking about it, and the planner comes in and says, you're going to build this story, and I want an introduction and a setting. It says the introduction, introduce Max, the mischievous and witty monkey who is a leader of a merry band in the vibrant jungle. And so it's going to outline what it wants you to write about, and the climax and conclusion and the epilogue. Max and his merry band continue to explore the jungle, taking on new adventures and spreading laughter wherever they go. It's a happy monkey. And then what happens is your author starts writing. He writes the first chapter. Yeah, look at that. You're gonna write a whole book, and the critic comes in and says, hey, listen, I got some feedback here. This introduction sets up a vibrant and enchanting jungle filled with laughter, providing a strong foundation of the story. So he starts going through, analyzing the story. And Sam says, thanks. Thank you, Sam. And then the planner comes back and rewrites a little bit of the story, does a revision. And the editor looks at it and says, the revised chapter does an excellent job of evoking the sense and setting of the scene in the vibrant jungle, the descriptions of the sights and sounds. So the editor likes what's being written. And the critic comes back and does a little bit more criticism. And then the author comes back to start writing. Eventually, I don't write anymore because I'm set to 10. So they're going to talk back and forth 10 times and it'll stop because I don't want to break the bank. But this would go on and create an entire book for me. And all I did was give it that log line. What do you think? That's insane, isn't it? Anybody have a comment? Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, it is. We're in a wild world. This is the front end, okay? And in order to run this, I have to run it in a sub-process. So the code's actually being run in a sub-process. And so let's take a look at the sub-process. That was dumb. So I call it query solver. And here's the sub-process that the code. This is the actual code. This is the AutoGen code that's running in the sub-process. And so if you look at this, I'm using Turbo 3.5 to make it cheaper than 4. And then I have my element, my large language configuration, as you saw in the previous one. And then I have my agents. And here's my user agent. And he's a human user. And he interacts with the planner to discuss the log line. And then I have my user, which doesn't do really anything, but he's there. But underneath him, there's code to execute the reading process. Then the author, you'll follow the approved plan. So there's been a plan created by the planner, and the author follows it. Planner suggests a revised plan and revise the plan based on feedback from the critic. And the user and a critic will give some feedback. Now, if I left this user out, since he's mentioned here in this prompt, I would get a glitch. All right, with that said, you have the editor. He's going to review the content written by the book and provide feedback. And then you get the critic. And you have the critic going to double check. So you see all this stuff right here, and it's just all English. I mean, from my perspective, if you're familiar in the coding, if you've been coding like me for like 32 years or 42, you look at this and go, oh my goodness, I'm just coding just by giving English language. I'm not really coding like I used to. And so you're going to see how everything's going to change. And prompting is going to become really important because it's extremely powerful. Coding is not going to go away, but a lot of stuff that people do that we need a coder for, we don't need them anymore because they're going to use prompting instead. All right, we're right on the 329. And I got through everything. I can't believe it. So let's go back to the slide deck and see where we are.